life of Jesus. People, they come to Jesus, but they do not truly know who he is. He is the way, the truth, and the life.
So it's week 18. And last week we finished with Jesus being laid in the tomb. Everybody has seen Jesus' power. They know about his prophecies. They know that he said that he will rise in 3 days. And so the chief priests and the Pharisees, they go before Pilate and they try their best to stop this from happening. And this part is so important. They have an invested interest in Jesus' tomb not being empty. Because if the tomb is empty, Jesus is who he said he is. Everything in history leads to Jesus' tomb being empty. If it was not, they'd have just displayed Jesus' body the moment this Christian movement started. And there are many theories about what happened to Jesus' body. Very few people, however, believe that Jesus does not exist. You see, the first manuscripts in the New Testament were available within the first 25 years of Jesus' death. That is too soon for it to be a legend. And others believe that the disciples, that they stole the body and that they lied. And then some believe that they were hallucinating. And some believe that Jesus was not really dead, but unconscious and he woke up. I'm telling you, the only one that makes sense to me is that Jesus raised from the dead. So first of all, to believe that the disciples stole the body would be extremely unlikely. Why? The soldiers, they sealed the tomb with a clay-like substance that was imprinted with the Roman imperial seal. If you break the seal, there will be punishment. And not only for you, but the soldiers will be punished also. And these Roman soldiers, they were trained to make sure people were dead during crucifixion. But they were also trained to protect and make sure that nobody got past to steal this body. And we've already seen how Peter is terrible with a sword. I mean, do you think that they can defeat soldiers that are protecting the tomb? I don't. And all the things that they do to protect Jesus' body, they end up proving more the power that Jesus has, how he is greater. And then Sunday comes around, and the Bible tells us exactly what happens. Mark 16:1. When the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus. These women who were there when Jesus died on the cross, they saw that Jesus was dead. They were taking these spices to hide the odor, and dead people smell really bad. And they get to the tomb. And all of a sudden, there's this earthquake, and the guards, they faint out of fear as an angel appears and rolls back the stone. And I find it amazing how not only did these women not faint, but they were the first eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection. If you are writing this story and you want people to believe it in the first century, a woman is not the first one to witness Jesus' resurrection. And our Jesus has done more for women than anybody in the history of mankind. And as we go back to the story, we see the women, and they see that this tomb is empty. Matthew 28:5-6. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. And he is not here, for he has risen. As he said, come, see the place where he lay." And Mary Magdalene, she runs off to tell Peter about what has happened. And the other women who are still there, they see these two angels who tell them to go tell the disciples to meet Jesus in Galilee. And so they take off to go catch up with Mary Magdalene. Matthew 28:8. So they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Everything at this moment is chaos. Emotions are going everywhere. We look back on it, but they are experiencing it. They do not yet fully understand what Jesus did on the cross, but him raising from the dead is making everything real. You can tell me a lot about yourself, But if you tell me that you are going to rise from the dead and you do it, I'm going to start listening." Just then, the guards wake up. They all know exactly what they saw, and they are in some serious trouble with this tomb empty. And they are not going to tell the officials that disciples stole the body. These soldiers want to live. And if this happened, they would most surely die. These soldiers, they live to tell the story about what happens. Normally, they would have been killed. But yet, they are released to share with everyone that untrained fishermen came and stole the body while they were sleeping. That is a disgrace for these soldiers. They would have had to be bribed to disgrace themselves. Meanwhile, the women, they see Jesus while they're going to see the disciples. Matthew 28, 9 and 10. "And behold, Jesus met them and said, 'Greetings.' And they came up and took hold of his feet, and they worshiped him. And then Jesus said to them, 'Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me.'" Not only were these women the first to see the empty tomb, they were the first to see Jesus. They were the first to give their life to Christ. And so they finally get to the disciples, and they tell them just what they've seen. And Peter takes off like a shot. But of course, John tells us that he outruns Peter. I mean, you better believe if I were writing this story and I beat my buddy Cody to the tomb, I would write down in the gospel that I beat him. John tells us that he does not go in, but that he waits for Peter. And Peter, he goes into the tomb and he sees the linen cloths and no Jesus. And he marvels at what has just happened. I mean, how could you not? At that moment is when John gives his life to Christ. John 28. And then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. It has been a crazy morning indeed. Mary has not yet seen Jesus. She returns to the tomb, and she sees two angels. And then Jesus, she sees him, and she believes. And it's not just Mary. Jesus appears to Peter, and then he appears to so many witnesses. The Bible tells us that 500 people saw the resurrected Jesus. 500 people do not hallucinate. That can't be right. The skeptics, they try to say that the disciples were lying. Why would they die if it were a lie? Tradition tells us that all of them were killed for their faith. Every one of you lies to get yourself out of trouble, not to get yourself into it. I am not dying for a lie. Another theory is that Jesus was just unconscious. So you're telling me that he was beat unto an inch of death, hung on a cross, stabbed with a spear, and laid in a tomb for 3 days. And then he jumps up, rolls away a tomb that was designed for multiple people to move to protect the tomb. He karate chops some Roman guards and goes on a 7-mile stroll to Emmaus. That takes a lot more faith than I have. And then Jesus, he meets two disciples on the road to Emmaus. At first, they don't recognize him because they were kept from seeing him. And they're talking about all the things that Jesus has done. Luke 24:27. And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus interpreted to them all the scriptures, the things concerning himself. These men are amazed at everything Jesus fulfilled. And so should we. And finally, they get to their house and they sit down to eat and they break bread. And instantly their eyes are opened. And they see Jesus. And then instantly he leaves. Do you believe Jesus is who he said he is? And have you let him in to break bread? Revelation 3:20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and eat with him, and he with me." Jesus appears to more and more people. More people can break bread with him. And many, like Thomas, they first doubt, but when they see him, they call him Lord. But how amazing is what Jesus says next. And he is talking about you. John 20:29. Jesus said to him, have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. He's talking about you, guys. Jesus is who he said he is. And he gave his disciples, including you, a mission. Matthew 28:19 and 20. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. We are to go. You have now heard over these last 18 weeks. You've heard about Jesus. How are you going to react? Will you go? Will you teach? Will you do? And will you live a life that Jesus has called you to live until he returns? In Acts 1:8 it says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth. Jesus has sent the Holy Spirit, and we can live a life devoted to him because he was the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. Jesus is the apex of all human civilization. Jesus is the living water. He is the light of this world, and he is the bread of life. And the tomb is empty. He has risen, and he has went to heaven. Acts 1:9. And when he said these things, as they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. The Bible tells us that he will return in the same way someday. And the first question I have for you is, are you ready? And the second question I have for you is, who are you taking